trees, clubs.
Oh, here we go. All right. Hello, everyone, and welcome to the very first TEA Drawing Days, a Lunch and Learn series. In this series, we will be doing a standalone lessons and episodes in which an expert artist from our community, of the TEA community, will be teaching us how to draw a simple sketch as a lesson in visual communication. And the purpose of this is because a lot of times when we're in meetings or we're at cocktails with our friends and colleagues, or we're just at our desk and having a conversation, we always like to describe our ideas, but a lot of times we need a little bit of a sketch to help us along the way to help visually communicate it. And more communication is better in meetings. So as we jump into this, I do want to note that this meeting is being recorded so that we can post it on our TEA YouTube channel so that we can refer back to it for later. If you're able to make this lesson, great, because you're all here. But if you're not able to make the next lesson, that's okay too, because the lessons will not build upon each other. So we're very excited to debut this meeting and this event series. So to get started, hello, I'm Sam Lieberstein. I'm a senior project coordinator at the Thinkwell Group. And we are going to be beginning shortly. And I do want to do a checklist of everything that you guys will need to have. We want this to be as accessible as possible. So you can do it from your desk at the office. You can do it from your house, because a lot of us are still working from home. You could even do it from a construction site, which I think I see some good friends of mine down there in a trailer. So what we'll need is a pencil. So make sure you got your pencil, an eraser. Mine is on a different pencil, a pen, a Sharpie, or a fatter tip marker, obviously a piece of paper to draw on. And you also might want to have something to draw on top of, because we don't want the Sharpie to bleed through on any of our desks. So without further ado, I'm going to introduce our fantastic artist for today's lesson. Josh Schwartz is a production designer and artist with a passion for theme parks, live spectacles, and immersive experiences. He's worked with various themed entertainment companies, currently as a creative lead designer with Adirondack Studios, and on global projects, many in which the concept design through the production of props, graphics, and scenery play a huge role. Using a diverse range of skills, he knows what it takes to transform a concept from a napkin sketch to a final product. Most notably, his drawings and colorful painting style help visualize new ideas and celebrate great attractions and pop culture icons. You may even catch him drawing while riding your favorite theme park ride. All right, so without further ado, take it away, Josh.
Thanks for the intro, Sam. Hey, everyone. Really appreciate you joining on this fine Tuesday. Happy to be here. And like Sam said, I'm a scenic designer by trade. And with that comes a lot of different skills: illustration, 3D modeling, sketching, concept design. But the goal of today, I think, is to share a little bit of my process for speed sketching with you guys, do a little demonstration, and hopefully you could take something away for your own meetings or personal projects in the future. Being an illustrator and being able to spend hours making a really beautiful piece of art is fantastic and great. But in my experience so far in the industry and with Adirondack Studios, is that being able to very quickly pop out a napkin sketch or a really rough drawing on the fly in a meeting is almost equally as helpful and useful in the industry. Because I've been in a lot of meetings where we've got people on all sides of the table trying to explain different ideas to each other, and it's clear that one side of the room may not understand, or one person may have one idea of what something looks like versus another. So to be that person in the room that could grab a whiteboard or grab a napkin and just very quickly sketch out an idea, and even if it's not right, you could just put in the middle and say, like this, pose that question, it could really start to get some conversations going and help everyone in the room hone in on what that idea is to move forward. So that being said, today I'll be focusing on how to sketch quickly, showing how I think about it. And I'll be working on in the theme, drawing some elements in the theme of like a whimsical critter forest, think critter country elements at Disneyland, Splash Mountain, Winnie the Pooh, fun stuff like that. And the reason is because I want to try to show how to combine different elements in a simple black and white sketch so that they read clearly. And I think this theme allows in the drawings that we're going to do to kind of show a separation between like natural forms like rockwork, trees, and grassy bluffs with more man-made structures, or in this case, critter-made structures like little wooden birdhouses or shacks or windows, things like that. And how we could kind of separate those and include them in a nice sketch. So with that being said, let's start this drawing. Courtney, you want to spotlight the sketch pad? There we go. So the way I'd like to start with this is by, let me calm that down. I'm going to divide my page into a few sections here, and I'll explain why. So I'm going to dedicate I'm just going to box it in this left side of my page for some smaller, quicker little prop and scenic sketches that we're going to kind of break down those different elements I described and do kind of standalone sketches to kind of learn how to draw those various elements. And then over here on the right side, the upper right side, I'm going to dedicate a larger frame where we're actually going to draw an environment or a scene, like something you see in a museum exhibit or an attraction like a ride, that will then combine all of those elements that we drew small over here. That way, we kind of have a little bit of practice on the left, and then we could use all of those different elements for our knowledge here on the right and bring a little awesome critter forest to life. So with that being said, I'm going to head over to my left column here. And let's start off with some props, something that you would find in this environment or like Frontierland, if you're familiar with those themes. Something I recommend is an app for reference imagery. There are several different apps. This one is called VizRef. And also if you're working on a desktop, there are a lot of different ones you could download too. And pretty much this lets you just search on Google and copy and paste any images that you want to reference. Keep up in the background. You don't want to copy anything exactly, especially something another artist has done, but it's good to kind of have all of your reference in one place and lay your eyes on it or have that in the background, and it helps your brain really guide your hand into drawing what you're trying to visually communicate to your team or to an audience. So I'm going to start off with some props here. And I think I'm just going to try to draw like a little stack of crates and barrels, some lanterns. So I'm going to start off with a barrel. And I'm going to start, in order to draw this tubular shape in perspective, I'm going to draw two circles, two ovals, I should say, and then connect them with a curved line. Ultimately, this lower circle is going to go away. So this is the top face of our barrel. And I'm going to kind of very quickly indicate in those wooden lines. And then I'm going to draw in some quick horizontal metal brackets for this barrel. And that's as far as I'm going to take that guy for right now. To show that this is sitting on the ground, I'm just going to very quickly indicate some little grassy forms. And I'm doing this very simply, just with little fun bumpy shapes that slightly overlap the bottom of this barrel, and that adds a sense of depth to the scene and shows that it's kind of sitting in a patch of grass. Next, let's add like a little wooden bucket, which is kind of like the barrel, except this only tapers on one side. Again, I'm going to draw a second oval at the bottom. This time it's smaller, so it tapers in. And similar to the barrel, I'm going to draw in my wood lines, add some framing. And I'm gonna kind of add some very loose shading on the inside there to give it some depth. Great, that's looking fun. I'm gonna add, instead of grass this time, I'm gonna add some rocks or some pebbles. Cool. Now I wanna have a shovel, little shovel tool sticking out of this bucket. So I'm gonna draw in my shape there, my rod. I'm just very loosely kind of drawing in a handle. Okay, so there's a shovel sticking out. I'm gonna add kind of a rock here. I want to put a lantern in the scene to illuminate it. Light fixture. So I'm kind of adding in a rock here. I'm doing this by making kind of a curved shape, smooth, that terminates with the ground. I'm gonna very roughly draw in the shape of an old kind of Western lantern. You can see I'm being very, very loosey-goosey here. None of this is locked in. You're just trying to convey your ideas as quickly as possible. I'm going to add in some more grass, maybe some flowers, maybe a little like hill in the background. And then I like to add this kind of a ground plane to kind of give the scene a little bit of a footing or a landing. Kind of helps to balance it. I also like to kind of add a frame around my piece just to keep it like a little comic strip. And there we go. So now that I've used my pencil to really rough in the line work, I'm going to come in, not with my Sharpie, but if you have a finer tipped pen or a finer tipped permanent marker, now I like to quickly come in and very loosely draw over the lines I've already created, but in a neater fashion. Essentially, this is now going to be our permanent line, so you want to be a tad more careful when doing these. You see I'm just drawing over those rough pencil lines that I originally blocked in. And eventually, once I get all of this inked line work in, it's a little bit more refined. I'm going to come in with my eraser and get rid of our original rougher pencil line work to get more of a clean drawing. It's less muddy. So I'm just going to do this as quickly as possible. All right. So now I've got this cute little vignette scene here of some props, and I'm going to erase away my pencil lines. Depending on what kind of ink you're using, you might want to be more delicate with it, because sometimes they could smear. All right, there we go. I can see how clean that looks. Sam's laughing at the smear comment.
Not cream
Great.
cheese in this instance.
You're thinking about the cream cheese and
Oh yeah,
bagels and schmear, the breakfast of champions.
So before we move on to the next step, one question I wanted to ask you is, you have, when you're depicting the barrel or the lantern or the shovel, how do you decide what angle you want it to sit at to convey the characterization?
That is a good question. I think it really depends on the purpose of the drawing. And if you're creating a sketch for a piece of concept art, or if you're in a meeting, like I was saying earlier, trying to convey how something is laid out as quickly as possible. So in this instance, I was just kind of figuring all that out in my brain and what would kind of look best in context with everything in this scene.
Got it.
So it's kind of, and that takes a lot of learning and practice, thinking about an overall composition. And I think on the next little doodle I'll do here, I'll get into that a little bit more as far as in your initial stages with pencil, like how to balance out your piece before bringing it to line work. And then you have some room to be malleable with it until you get everything in a position at an angle or a place that you like it before finalizing it.
Right.
So now, as a final step here, I'm just going to come in with a fatter tip permanent marker like a Sharpie. And you want to be really careful with this step because you don't want to overdo it. One thing that's important is whenever you're doing something like this with any kind of shading, you want to, in your mind, determine a light source, a basic light source. And I typically like to use kind of the top left corner as where my sun would be, hypothetically. So if I just drew this little sun for your reference outside of this frame, I'm going to draw a little arrow. So now I could, when I go in with this Sharpie, I'm thinking about, okay, if the sun is casting on these items from the top left, all of my shadows or darker lines that I want to highlight are going to be on the lower right of all of these objects. And just by doing that and keeping it really simple, this line drawing here is going to pop a lot more and the elements are going to stand out on their own. Again, you don't want to overdo this. You want to, because it's permanent, you just want to be subtle with it as possible until you get to a point that looks pretty good. So see, like I'm saying on the lantern, on the rock here, I'm just kind of shading in on the lower right. These flowers, I'm doing the same thing. These blades of grass on the shovel. Any edge that sun would cast a shadow on. I want to kind of emphasize with this darker line. So I think that's looking pretty good now. If you overdo it with the fat marker, you're going to get a lot of lines that are really heavy and hard to read. So that takes some practice too. All right. Hopefully that's pretty clear. The next element I do now that we've done some kind of man-made props, I'm going to draw in an example of a tree stump, a more organic form. A tree stump that's kind of sitting on some cliffs and some grassy rock work. So and this was hard, when I first started drawing, I think any designer might run into this. I'm very detail oriented and my brain always wants to think 10 steps ahead. And when you do that, you kind of think about like every line you lay down on the paper has to have a purpose and is going to be final. But if you let that go and you just kind of let your hands start moving around the page and you think of your drawing as like a blank piece of clay, you could really get a nice form in quicker with less thought before locking in on some of those details. So you can see right now, I'm just being like very, very loose with my line work here because, I know I'm going to erase it away eventually, but I'm doing this just to kind of block in like a ball of clay some major forms. You could see that this form up here is the beginning of my tree stump. When you're drawing trees, you never want to have rigid straight lines unless that's a stylized choice you're going for. So here I've got a nice curve on the left side. I've got to indicate kind of a broken branch sticking out on the left side. A hollowed out portion of the dead tree up here. And then where I hit the ground, I'm going to start adding some root forms where that would terminate. And down here, I'm starting to indicate kind of cliffy surface that this thing is sitting on in nature. And then as I did above earlier for rocks, I'm going to kind of draw those in as smooth circles anywhere it makes sense. And when they hit the ground, you kind of do that smooth surface on top and then have it terminate into a little bit of bubbly grass on the ground. You could just kind of mix and match whatever works good. I'm drawing some large rocks, some smaller rocks, overlapping. Now these two ledges over here, in my mind, are kind of grassy ledges. But then break away into this more jagged rock work. It's always fun to draw in some clouds for some added style. Just draw these like big marshmallows, and the clouds in a scene always kind of help to frame it or guide your eye to move where you want it to move. So these clouds can kind of be arranged in a way to kind of guide your eye towards the center of your focal point. Okay, so I've got some good pencil line work in here now. I'm going to come in with my fine tip marker again. And I'm going to start to refine this jagged looking tree stump here. I'm starting with my outer lines, kind of drawing in some of these gnarly roots, and then where they terminate the surface, again, I'm just adding some simple shapes to indicate that it's like sticking into a patch of dirt or a patch of grass. Kind of drawing in a cracked opening to that tree. Now, how do I indicate that this is grass? On the lower edge, I'm just kind of using my grass shape overhanging with those kind of bendy forms. And that kind of tells your eye very quickly, okay, like this is a patch of grass overhanging the cliff. Start to work in my rocks that I penciled in. You know, if there's something I did in the pencil that I didn't quite like, now is your chance to kind of draw over that in a better, more aesthetically pleasing way. I'm just going to start to kind of block in black where I want to indicate negative space. And I'm going to come in further with my Sharpie here in a bit, but this is mostly so I can keep track of what I'm trying to draw here. Okay, and very loosely draw in these clouds. I'm going to draw in my little frame. And now it's the fun time for erasing. This is like erasing away all your sins for the year, you know? It feels good. Forget about the past. Now we're just looking forward. And a little Bob Ross over here.
If only it were that easy.
Okay, so now before I come in with my shading with the Sharpie, I'm going to take this opportunity now that I have a cleaned up drawing to better emphasize the difference between some of the elements we're seeing. So here we have a tree trunk, we have a grassy bluff, and then we have rock work. Right now they all kind of mush together. And so, you know, there's different tactics and every artist has their own style. But I like to kind of create a slightly different kind of fill or a shading style or stippling technique on each of these that kind of visually will help separate them. So for example, I'm going to start loosely shading the tree trunk with these very small diagonal lines where my shadow would be if the sun's on our top left, like in the previous sketch. You can see I'm starting to work those in like that. I'm also going to kind of add in some kind of wood lines. Now for grass, I'm going to do a little bit of stippling this. These almost can look like dots. They're little, like little bumps that show that there's some rough texture happening here on this surface. You can see that's starting to separate now. And then that leaves our rocks as a smooth surface. So now, when we come in with our Sharpie, it's all going to kind of come together, hopefully. At least enough to get your idea across to the world. For these rocks, the shadows I'm making on these rocks, I'm kind of following that curvature form to kind of emphasize that shape. Okay. Just gonna quickly come in, add a little bit of depth to these clouds, or fluffy, happy little clouds. The sun.
Did you just say happy little clouds, Bob?
I did. I recently watched the Bob Ross documentary on Netflix. It's pretty cool to see. So I'm honing that Bob energy.
Good.
All right. So now we have some natural forms, a tree, some rocks, and some cliffs. I think we're almost ready for our big piece here. How are we doing? We doing okay on time, Sam?
I think we're okay. We got about half an hour left.
All right. I'll try to rush through this next mini sketch so we can get on to the big one. So last but not least, I'm going to draw a little birdhouse here to show something that's a little bit more architectural, where you have to be a little bit more precise and rigid with your lines and keep perspective in mind. So I want the overall form of this to be kind of tapered triangular shape. And I'm starting with, I'm going to be drawing it at sort of like an isometric angle. So I'm drawing our front face first. And I'm quickly going to extend these lines down this way to show the side of it. Okay. All right. So there's our basic structure of our birdhouse. I'm going to add a little ridge along the roof here. And add a little window for these little birds to look out of. And then a little cute little door. And then you have a porch, obviously. These little critters are living the luxurious lifestyle they deserve. So I'm drawing in that porch. And, you know, thinking of these as wood planks, the same way we did with the barrels in the bucket, just quickly indicating the directional lines of the way you want your wood grain to be really helps indicate form. And I'm going to do the same thing with the roof here because I want these to be like shingled tiles. So I draw these horizontal lines here. And up here on the ridge, I'm going to draw some vertical curved lines. Now for shingles, I like to go, you don't want to just grid this out because then it's not going to look realistic. So I like to go one row at a time when doing something like shingles and try to keep them as even as possible. Then on the next row, I don't want to line up these lines. I want to stagger them. So the easiest way is just to then create a line for the next row of shingles down the middle of the previous row, and so on and so forth. There we go. Those are looking pretty decent. We're just going to draw a little window with some shutters on the side. Draw some wood framing. Can add a little fence running around. Just really very quickly drawing in some lines. And then I've kind of run out of paper space here, but I'm just trying to show a fun little ladder for these squirrels or birds or chipmunks to get up into this house. I'm going to draw some happy little clouds in there. Now I'm going to come in. Oh, I almost forgot. This thing would be attached via a rope on a connection point. So now I'm going to come in with my fine tip marker, as we did before. Start to block in these forms. Going over what I've already drawn a little bit cleaner. I hope I'm not moving too fast for you all, but my thought is you could kind of take some of these exercises and then practice them afterwards or in the future. Hopefully seeing this play out rather quickly gives you some ideas and knowledge. All right. Come in with the eraser. Looking sweet. I'm gonna come in with my Sharpie. Again, my light source is the top left. So everything I shade with the Sharpie is going to reflect that. Kind of add some depth to this door frame. And this ladder. Maybe just some of these shingles here.
If only mine looked close to that. Oh, Lord, that's beautiful.
Oh, I want to see yours, whoever that was. I'm sure it's absolutely incredible, and it'll only get better in time. But thank you.
You are welcome.
That's why we're all here, though, to learn the very easy stuff and follow along from an expert, so we can take this into all of our different disciplines, whether it's business development, sales, if you're an engineer, if you're a project manager, any way to help better communicate what you're trying to communicate other than with just words only helps for whatever meeting that you're in or whatever you're trying to communicate in general.
All right. So if we're ready, I think it's time to dive into the full scene sketch. What do we all think? Yeah?
Why, sure.
Tally ho.
Let's do it. All right. I'm going to take my dedicated space and kind of give myself a loose framework to keep within so I don't run off the page. All right. So I think to start this off, I'm going to draw in some very basic pencil lines that will kind of guide the overall composition before I actually draw anything concrete. This is kind of a very artsy approach here. I'm kind of just playing around, something that might look good. This is very, very rough, but like I said, I'm creating a cool layout essentially here. Again, I'm in the early stages of my ball of clay, and now I've kind of got this layout, which I think is looking pretty good about where my overall forms are going to sit. But now I can start to go in with some refinement and block in what these elements actually are. So I think the most obvious one I've drawn right here so far is the beginnings of our tree trunk on the right side of the panel here. So I'm going to start working there. I'm not going to make it like the one on the left, which is dead. This is going to be a living tree, some kind of grand oak tree. And I'm going to have fun with the shape of this trunk. I'm going to have it more curved on the left side, a little bit more rigid on the right side. Have some branches kind of taper out on either side. When you're drawing trees, when I'm drawing trees at least, I find it works best to, if you're planning to draw foliage or bushels of the leaves, to draw out your branches first, because otherwise your bushels are going to be kind of floating in space, and then you have to draw your branches to match them. So like it would occur in nature, I'm drawing out the shape of our branches that looks best first. And then, now that I know where those are located, the leaves would then spur off of the tips of each of these branches. So that will then guide me to draw in my forms of foliage hanging down from this tree. So I'm starting with this like leftmost tip here, and just like similar to how I drew the clouds, I'm loosely indicating the outer edge of this bushel of leaves. Moving on to the next one. That looks pretty cool. To the next one over here. Cool. I've got a pretty neat looking canopy. Now I'm actually going to add some width to these branches and show how they connect to the main trunk of the tree and terminate at these bushels up top. Okay, cool. Now, as we did before, where we get to the base of this trunk, I'm going to start to indicate some roots terminating into a cliff. And these are fun, guys. You could have some fun, make these pretty stylized as you want them. Again, if you're tasked with drawing a specific type of tree and whatever geographical concept you're working on, it helps to pull up reference imagery of tree types and get inspired by images from nature. And then you could, let's say you could find like 3 or 4 cool different tree trunks. You could take the best parts of all 3 of those different reference images and combine them into one new beautiful tree that you compiled yourself. So what I'm doing here in the tree trunk, I'm just adding some little windows and doors showing that we have some fun little animals living in this space. Putting in a larger door at the base here. Just going to add a few steps there. Doorknob. Okay. And like I said, I'm start to kind of lock in my cliff form here. So I want this to be kind of sitting on a rocky bluff. And sticks up jagged like Pride Rock on the left and then tapers down a little bit more smoothly on the right. And again, I want the surface of this to be kind of grassy and mossy. So I'm starting to kind of show that grass overhanging, eventually kind of terminates into the ground there. Kind of build up a large rocky presence on the right side here. On some larger boulder shapes, combined with some smaller ones. I'm gonna kind of quickly indicate some pointed blades of grass. You know, this is kind of a good way to indicate any kind of foliage, really. This could be palm bushes, blades of grass, flowers, what have you. Reeds. I'll put some reeds in there. You can see in a pond. You know what? I'm actually going to extend the bottom of this a little bit. I'm going to follow the form of my edge to kind of emphasize how this cliff form is kind of pointing towards the tip of the Pride Rock. There we go. Now, I want to do something cool here. I want this cliff to be coming out of like a little pond or a swamp. So similar how I did in the practice sketch up on the top left, how I just kind of drew in a curvy ground plane. I'm going to do the same type of thing, but this will be to indicate water's edge. So I'm going to start in the back. I'm going to start a little bit higher. And then I'm going to kind of eyeball this and create a nice flowing curve. That kind of wraps our scene. Fix something I don't like. Okay. Now, you could kind of see that we have our cliff sticking out of the water. And as I said before, with the other forms, I like to create a termination point so it's clear where one thing ends and one thing begins. So to do that, I'm just going to kind of mass in some pebbles or circular rocks again here at water's edge. So we could clearly kind of see that water line. And then what also helps, similar to how I showed how the stippling texture can separate grass from other forms. One thing that's good for water is to create little ripples. You could do this pretty simply by kind of loosely following your outer edge of that form. You can see the way I'm doing that. And then it works the same on the inside too. So the water would kind of ripple around those rocks. And then just add some extra character in here. Let's just add 3 fun little lily pods for some frog friends. So I'm gonna add in 3 little ovals, and then lilies from my reference images that I have pulled up on the side tend to have little triangular slivers out of them. And then we usually have some reed action sticking out of the center. Like that. And you could add some more water ripples specifically around those to kind of show them floating in motion. Right. Now I'm going to address the rest of this water's edge here and kind of fill in the rest of my scene. I'll put a big rock in this left corner just because I want to. You are the god of your own illustration. Always remember that.
Just like in the Sims video game, right?
Oh yeah. Oh yeah. You know it. So here I'm kind of just massing in another form. Might add, how about we just add a stump? I'll add a dead tree stump over here, just to add something else into the scene.
Just as an FYI, Josh, we got about 10 minutes left.
Okay.
We can go over a little bit if we need to, but I know everyone has a limited amount of time for their lunch break, so.
We appreciate everyone who's on the clock joining from work today. Hopefully this is a fun little escape. I'm just indicating back here in the background, since we've done our forward middle ground, some kind of rolling hills. And then I'm going to draw in a sun kind of rising over the horizon, over the hill. Adding in these lines to indicate the sun rays. I'm going to put some of our clouds in there. Cool. I'm going to add one more. Add another door down here. Show that there's some kind of creature with a little dock on the water. Okay. And for fun, since we drew a birdhouse on the left, let's just hang a tiny little one from the tree over here. Cool. So now we're starting to have something. And at this point, since we're rushing a little bit, I'm going to come in quickly with our fine tip pen. Really as fast as I can here to start to block in some of these forms.
You're okay. We're at 12:51. No need to go too quick.
All good.
Because I know that we still want to be able to follow along with you.
All right, no worries. All right, so I'm just blocking in those canopies, coming back in over those branches, making them look a little bit more tidy. Those roots. This is like a little steps mounted to the door, mounted to the tree trunk, I'm sorry. A larger door down here. So, this scene we're drawing here is less of a meeting sketch and more of like a concept sketch of a vignette for a show set design scene and an attraction or exhibit. And if we have a little time here, I might show how you can draw a very quick plan view to kind of help guide that discussion. If people in your meeting or on your team are having trouble discussing or talking about how all these forms lay out in a physical space, how far back is that wall with the sky? If we're talking about an attraction, I would think of that as being a mural cyc wall. It has some uplighting on it, and then those rolling hills in the background would be kind of flat set pieces set on top of that, and then these other pieces would be dimensional, the most dimensional, that kind of bump out into the scene. I'm not sure if anyone's asking any questions, Sam, in the chat.
Yeah, we have a question of, do you have any specific pencil lead to make it easier to erase cleanly, such as HB, 2B, or anything like that?
Oh man, there might be fancy pencils out there like that. For this demonstration and just in general, I've just used the classic HB2 #2 pencils. They sell harder ones and softer ones. I typically just use these. They're the easiest to buy. They get the job done, and you could sharpen them to get a harder edge for certain details. But then if you're kind of like massing in the form of your scene, like I was doing earlier, talking about the ball of clay, when the tip of your pencil is a little bit less sharp and softer, it kind of helps to really rough in some basic shapes like that. Hopefully that kind of answers the question. Okay. And Sam, I think you were saying it'd be awesome to eventually at some point be able to see what everyone's working on today, how well they're following along, if you're going to share your progress. I don't know if on TEA there is some kind of hashtag or place to post your drawings from today, but it would be really cool to see.
Yeah, that's right. We would love to see all of your drawings. So please post your screenshots and or photos of your drawings and tag TEA or the Themed Entertainment Association on any of our various social medias. And make sure you use the hashtag TEA Drawing Days so that we can really get something trending and get them all aggregated together. I know some folks are probably going to have to step away pretty soon as we head towards the end of the lunch hour.
Coming to the close of this piece here.
Sam, can you type in under the chat where we need to post those?
So you can post it on your own social media and just tag TEA or press @ and then Themed Entertainment Association. Courtney, if you might be able to write out some instructions for this. And then also we want to make sure that everyone knows where they can see all of Josh's amazing stuff that he can do via his Instagram and his website and all that kind of stuff. So if you could post those links in the chat, that would be great. This video will be posted on the Themed Entertainment Association YouTube page.
Shameless plug here. For those of you who don't know, outside of my professional work, I've been doing these we've been doing these crazy videos where I do drawings of rides at theme parks like Disney and Universal on the rides. You can find those at my YouTube channel. And we've got a series going at this point. We got 3 down and 3 more upcoming. So those are a lot of fun. And I do this sort of thing, but in about 2 to 3 minutes time on some rides. Yeah.
8 minutes, 3 minutes, 5 minutes, you know.
It gets wild.
I know some folks are heading out, so I want to thank everyone for joining us. We will be doing another one in about a few weeks. So make sure you pay attention to your emails so you'll see the next invite for the next episode. And remember, just keep drawing, you know, it's okay. Sketches are sketches. It's not the SATs.
The main thing is to get the idea in your brain out on a piece of paper so people can talk about it, I think.
Exactly.
And that's where the fun starts. And then you could work with a team of other talented people who bring it to life in different ways. You could have someone start to 3D model it, someone really start to make a beautiful illustration out of it. But it all starts with an idea and a rough sketch.
That's right.
So for those of you heading out, really, Sam said, really appreciate you hopping in here and hanging out and giving this a shot. And those who have a few extra minutes, if you want to watch this wrap up here, we're almost there. I'm doing my darker shadows now with my Sharpie. Kind of giving this piece that extra pop.
So here's a fun question. How do you know when you're done? You know, the age-old artist question of how do you know when you're finished and you can say pencils down, it's enough.
Art is never finished. It's never done. Or if
Never done.
You're never gonna be happy with it.
Fair enough.
You know, I like to at least get it to a point where I've gone through all of these steps. If we're talking about in this context, right, this rough sketch context, at least get it to a point where I've gone through all those steps, where I've worked in all my line weights. And people can really understand what it is they're looking at. I think there's always room to tinker, but there's also times where you could accidentally overwork something and ruin it.
Right.
So, you know, you got to be careful.
Right. I think I may be at the point now where I'm doing too much Sharpie action and ruining it.
You want to show us your work, Sam?
Sure.
I think I'm pretty much.
Oh, it's a little blurry, but not
yeah,
too shabby.
You got that background blur on.
Oh yeah.
Actually, from what we're seeing with the blur, it looks amazing, dude.
Well, thank you. It's because I only had such a phenomenal teacher. So I think we're pretty much at our time. Again, I want to thank everyone for coming out for the debut of our inaugural series of drawing days. I hope you guys liked it. Let us know when you post your artwork, how much, if you liked it, and if you would want to come back to our next episode. And again, you don't have to, the lessons are not concurrent. So if you miss this one, you can come to the next one. No lessons will build upon each other. And we're so excited to continue this series. I want to thank Josh again for taking the time and really walking us through this amazing process that can only help everyone as they continue their careers in our amazing industry. Any final words from you, Josh?
No, except for wish everyone the best of luck in whatever they're doing out there on your projects. And I hope this gave you just a few tools at least to start drawing, if you don't already.
Yeah. All right. So I think that wraps us up here. And thank you again, everyone, for coming. Thank you, Josh. Post your stuff, tag TEA Drawing Days, hashtag TEA Drawing Days, tag Themed Entertainment Association. And remember, no matter what happens, just keep drawing. Just keep drawing.
All right.
Thank you, everyone.
See ya.
Thanks, John.